Today's lesson is over scatter plots and least square lines. One thing you're going to be doing today is correlation coefficient. And I'll show you how to calculate a correlation coefficient and tell you what we're going to use it for. And it's really simple. Correlation coefficient is R. The correlation coefficient is R. Here is a perfect negative correlation. If your value of R comes out to be -1, and we haven't even calculated it yet, but if it comes out to be -1, that means your line is dropping to the right, and it's a perfect negative correlation. If you have R equals 0, R equals 0 means that there's no correlation whatsoever to the data that you have plotted on the graph. Notice that it's scattered everywhere. Can you draw a line that will encompass all of these dots? I mean, if I went this way, I'm leaving out 2. If I go this way, I'm leaving out 2. If I go this way, I'm leaving out 3. There's really no good line you can put to that. So if you have an R value of 0, that means it's just scattered everywhere. If you have a perfect positive correlation, that means your R was 1, and it would be rising to the right. Your R values could be anywhere from -1 to +1. So we know that 0 is what kind of correlation? No correlation. And a 1 is what kind? Perfect positive. And -1? Perfect negative, yes. If I had one that was in here, it's still a positive correlation, but you're leaving out some dots that are on either side of the line. If I had one that was in here, it's a negative correlation still. It's not perfect though. Some of the dots will be left out of the line. Think of it like gambling. If you know for certain somebody's going to win something, and you could bet everything on it because you're 100% certain. That's what this R value is over here. You're really certain of what's going to happen. If you have no clue who's going to win, you're at 0. It's just scattered everywhere. If you know who's going to lose a game, you're at a -1. If you fall in this area, in here somewhere, it's not 0, but it's somewhere like in this. Well, you could take a guess. Chances are maybe 33% chance they might lose or they might win. It depends on your R value. So here's how you're going to find a correlation coefficient using your calculator. Here's a list of data. You know from observation that when x is 0, y is a -3.2. When x is 2, y is 1.2, and so on. You're going to use this data to plot it and try to fit a line to the graph. And I'm going to show this on the calculator. So on the video, you'll hear my voice, but you just won't see the calculator screen that's in the back. Alright, on your calculator, and I'll still include the directions so you can listen to it. So if you go back to watch the video, you can do it as we do it. On the calculator, you need to start with a blank screen and hit the Stat button. It's just underneath the delete key. And then hit Edit. Now look at my list. I have list 1 and list 2, and that's not what I want to have in there. So if you ever find yourself where you have your lists filled with stuff that you don't want to go back and delete, one item at a time, you can do this. Look where my cursor is at. Put it up there on L2 and hit Clear. And then it takes away that list. You may not have anything in your list right now. And then L1, if you put the cursor on L1 and hit Clear, and then enter, it'll take it away. Now here's how you enter in the data. Now list 1, list 2, it doesn't say X and Y up there, so you have to determine. You're going to make list 1 be the X values in that table. So just hit 0, enter, and then 2, enter, 4, 6, 7, 8, and then 10. Enter in all those values from X. Go over to L2 by hitting the right arrow, and it'll take you straight to the first cell in L1. And enter in those numbers, negative 3.2. And remember, the minus sign is not a negative sign. The negative sign is at the bottom to the right of the decimal point. And then 1.2, 5, 8.8, 11.6, 13, and 17.5. Before you graph or plot these dots, you want to make sure there's nothing else that gets graphed on your screen. There's nothing worse than putting the time into entering in a bunch of stuff and you go to graph it and it's all jumbled because there's something left over in your calculator from what you did before. In order to figure that out, hit the Y equals button, which is the very top left button on your calculator, just under the screen on the very left. Now I have a really long equation in there. I don't want that showing up when I go to plot my points. So I'm just going to hit clear and it takes it out. You probably shouldn't have anything so far unless you're using one of your own calculators. Okay, now we want to plot all the points that we had in those lists. So go to the second button, hit second, and then Y equals. And you'll have stat plots. We're going to use the first one, so hit enter on the first one. You want to make sure that it's turned on, because if it's off, nothing's going to graph. The way you make sure it's on is you put your cursor on it and hit enter, and take that cursor away from it, and that on should be highlighted. Now choose the type of graph you want to make, and mine is already highlighted. It's just the one that has a bunch of dots there under the type. Put your cursor on that and hit enter. Now, what list number were my X values in? No, I mean what list number?
L1.
1. Now look at X list there. Do I have L1? If you don't have L1, here's how you get it. You hit second 1, and that would give you L1. For example, what if I wanted L5 in there instead of 1? I would just do second 5, and it would put it in there. But for this problem, we have L1. And what list number were our Y values in? 2, and I already have L2 up there. You can choose what type of mark you want the calculator to graph. And it can be a donut, a plus sign, or just a dot. And I chose the donut. You choose whatever you want. Okay. Now you can hit graph and it will show you all 4 quadrants. But we really don't need all 4 quadrants of the graph. We just want to look at the stuff that our data is going to show up on. It kind of zooms in on it. So the way that you graph something and make a custom screen so that the calculator will focus on what you need is to hit the zoom button, which is in the middle of the calculator at the top under the screen. It says zoom, hit zoom, and then 9. Did you get what's up there on the screen? So on your screen you should have come up with a graph that looks similar to this. You have the first quadrant there and you have some dots that are scattered about like this. The next thing we're going to do is find the correlation coefficient, which is R. Now not everybody's calculator is already set up to find R. We're going to do a calculation, and you can do that calculation and still not find R because it will not show up on your screen until you do something first, and that is this. So hit second quit from wherever you're at. Just get a blank screen. You're going to hit second 0, and that gives you the catalog of everything that's in your calculator. Whenever that catalog comes up, you'll see the A in the upper right hand corner of the screen. That means you can press an alpha numeric button, such like the alphabet, And what we're looking for is diagnostic on. So we have to go to the D's. If you start scrolling with the down arrow on this, it's going to take forever. Just hit the letter D, which is the same button as x to the -1. It has a matrix above the top of it. It's on the left-hand side of your calculator, 4 buttons down. And it takes you straight to the D's. And then from there, you can use your down arrow and scroll, and there's diagnostic on. You want to hit that, and it shows up on your screen, and then you have to hit enter. If it says done, then you're now able to find the R value. We're going to find the correlation coefficient by doing this. Hit stat, and then hit the right arrow and go to calc. You have a list of calculations through here you can perform. The one that we're going to look for is this, number 4, and on your calculator it might be a different number, but it's the ln/reg ax plus b, a linear regression ax plus b. You want to enter on that one, and it shows up on the screen. In order to perform this calculation, you must enter in the list numbers you want to use for x and y. So hit second one to get L1. Comma. The comma button is to the right of x squared. It's like the second button from the left. And then you want to hit second 2. That gives you list 2. You also want to, it's going to create an equation, but you have to choose where to store it. So hit comma again, and then hit the VARS button. VARS is just to the left of clear. Hit that, and then right arrow over to YVARS. It'll say function. Hit enter, and you choose which one of those y values you want to put your equation in. I'm just going to choose 1, so hit enter. There's everything you need to do a linear regression. Hit enter, and look what comes up. You have an R value of 0.99929, and so on. What kind of, is this a really good positive correlation? You go from -1, 0, +1. This is perfect.
Oh yeah,
it's almost perfect, so that can work. If you want to use this equation to, and notice how it gives you the A value and the B value, so you can insert those into the equation and create the equation. You can do calculations with this without even having to write it down. Let's say I wanted to know what y was going to be if x were 55. So do this. Type in 55 and hit store. It's STO just beside the 1 and the 4. It gives you an arrow. And then XT theta n. It is just below the mode button. That's the X. Hit enter. And all it says is 55, which is what we want it to do. But if you want to find out what y is going to be when x is 55, go back to your VARS button, right arrow, and hit the function, and choose the equation that you entered in. Like we chose y1, so choose y1, hit enter, and then hit enter again. It gives you the answer, 109.59. So you'll know how to use that equation to make a prediction. When x is 55, y should be 109. Also, hit zoom 9 and look what shows up in your graph now. It gives you the line that goes through those dots, the best fit line.